Welcome to the Headley Highlight Show's Headley Headspaces. The Headspaces are a series of thoughts and musings I have during the course of the week, and I chew all over them with you. And this particular Headspace is called, "There's a lot of world leaders at your Victory Day parade, Mr. Putin. How come?" And before I jump all over that Headspace, I'd like to say thank you to all my listeners who have been coming to my show for the last 3 years and everyone who's jumped up into my YouTube. Yes, people, I got 1,882 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 1,500, so please jump up in there, subscribe, get the notification, and it will fall straight into your For You page and DM whenever I upload a video. You may also wish to encourage me on my journey of broadcasting and sharing and give me a donation at my website, which is called DeniseHeadley.com of the same name, where I accept crypto and fiat, darlings, and you can sponsor wings and chips and a Miranda, or fish and chips at my local fish and chip shop, or rice peas chicken, brown stew chicken, I don't know, a bit of scabeach. How about that? At my website. Thank you so much in anticipation of your goodwill. So let me jump all over this really quickly. And I want to talk about some important things in relation to the victory parades that are happening all over the world. And I think it's important to make this statement at the top of the headspace. Victory Day is basically about the celebration of the world and the sacrifices that they made in the defeat of the Nazi party in Germany. And what I think often is lacking is truth and fact in and around that. If you think about the perception of how people view Russia right now, most people think Russia is a terrible country. They don't like Vladimir Putin. They don't know why they don't like him, but they know that quite often they don't like him for some reason. And part of that conditioning of thinking is about also forgetting the sacrifice that Russia made during the Second World War. And I just want to give a little bit of context before I jump into this conversation about why the VE Day celebration was so important and he had so many world leaders there. So officially, Russia used to be the Soviet Union, and they signed a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany called the Ribbentrop Pact in 1939. In June, on the 22nd of June 1941, Hitler broke that pact and he launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, attacking the USSR. And this marked the beginning of what was called the Eastern Front, and that became the most deadliest theatre of war during that conflict. The Red Army, as they were called, or the Russian army, absorbed the brunt of Nazi power in Europe. Major turning points were the Battle of Moscow in 1941. The Red Army halted the advance of the Nazis into the Soviet capital in 1941. Then you had the Battle of Stalingrad in 1942 to 1943, and it was a decisive Soviet victory which turned the tide in Europe. You also had the Battle of Kursk, interesting that they're back there, in 1943. That was the largest tank battle in history, and it ended the German offensive capabilities in the Eastern Front. You had Operation Bagration, how do you say that word? Operation Bagration in 1944. It was a massive Soviet offensive that crushed the German army group center. And in 1945, the Red Army advanced all the way to Berlin, capturing Germany and forcing Hitler's suicide. This is the impact on the Soviet Union. There were 27 million Soviet citizens that died in these offensives. Everyone in Russia has a relative that died. There were 8 to 10 million military deaths and 17 to 19 civilian deaths. The USSR lost more people than any other allied country combined. These deaths were attributed to German atrocities in the following areas and genocide in Ukraine, Belarus, and also in Russia. And in sieges, Leningrad, over 1 million civilians died, and there was forced labor, famine, scorched earth, and policies around sexual violence. Russia lost 70,000 villages and towns. They were destroyed by the occupation. Belarus lost 80% of its towns. Western Russia and Ukraine also suffered heavy losses. There were whole regions where homes, railroads, schools and factories and industrial production was also relocated after the Nazi advance was crushed. So that's the history of Russia's involvement in the war. And most times when you listen to people, you wouldn't believe that Russia had any role to play in the Second World War. If it wasn't for Russia, we in Europe would not have been able to have the success we had because they were weakened in the Western Front. The USSR liberated eastern parts of Central Europe from Nazi control. They freed Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, and they liberated Auschwitz in 1945. Soviet soldiers played a key role in defeating Nazi occupation in Eastern Europe and weakened the German army from the east. And once that was done, then you had D-Day, yeah? So they did all the graft and then we had D-Day. I'm not saying we didn't do any, but it's fair to say that it's really important that you have the context. Now, what happened after the war was that Russia emerged as a superpower. They established communist governments in many of the countries they liberated, and they were a rival to the US, and that was the beginning of the Cold War. So that's the context, people. So now roll in Victory Day and what's going on at the moment. You already are aware that there is a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Now, what happened was that Mr. Vladimir Zelensky threatened the world leaders at the VE Day. And let's listen to what he said. And before I play this to you, the backdrop to this is that the nations that are allying with Russia, with China, with the BRICS nations are coalescing around those people that they're supporting. So this is really one of the reasons why this VE Day celebration was important, not just for Russia, but it was a demonstration of a shift in the global geopolitical power tectonic plates. Because let's face it, there were 29 leaders from separate countries. There was a joint military parade, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. And it was a display of alliance. It was a display of allegiance. And many European leaders were being discouraged and effectively corralled not to attend. I'm going to play you a little excerpt from Serbia's Robert Fico, Prime Minister, in response to the threats to world leaders that Zelensky basically put out in the media.
Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico's fury toward Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky escalated sharply after Zelensky warned foreign delegations to reconsider attending Russia's Victory Day parade on May 9th. The Ukrainian leader, speaking on May 3rd, said Kyiv could not guarantee the safety of foreign officials in Moscow, claiming Russia might orchestrate explosions or arsons and pin the blame on Ukraine, an assertion that rattled several international observers. Fico interpreted Zelensky's remarks as an audacious attempt to intimidate global leaders, calling the warning absurd and disrespectful to presidents of nations like China and Brazil.
This is unacceptable. This is ridiculous to me. The way Mr. Zelensky, I am a small player. He is not threatening me. He is threatening the Chinese president. He is threatening the Brazilian president. He is threatening the president and the head of state and the prime minister of the countries where hundreds of millions of people live. He says, "Don't go there, or we, Ukraine, will do something to you." This is not done.
The reason I wanted to bring that to your attention because this was the backdrop against which the VE Day celebrations were taking place in Russia. There was potentially the threat of some kind of retaliatory attack by the Ukrainians on world leaders because of the importance of what the day represents. A few days after the statement, Dmitry Medvedev is the security lead for Russia, said the following things in relation to the potential threat.
Responded with a venomous tirade targeting Zelensky, painting his warnings as mere provocations.
The unshaven piece of trash stated that he rejects Putin's proposal for a 3-day truce on May 9th and cannot ensure the safety of world leaders in Moscow, but who is looking for his guarantees? Just a verbal provocation, nothing more. The scumbag understands that in the case of a real provocation on Victory Day, no one can guarantee that Kyiv will see May 10th.
So a counter threat was made, essentially, that Kyiv would not necessarily be there after the VE Day celebration if anything happened to the world leaders. And the reason I think there was such pressure on the world leaders not to attend is because of the importance of the day and what it was saying in relation to the position that Russia now has as a geopolitical leader. 29 countries attended. There was President Xi, Lula from Brazil. You had the Cuban president, Miguel Diaz. They were joined by the Belarusian president, Alexander Lukashenko. Central Asian leaders were there from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. All of the stans, I think, were present. You also had leaders from Burkina Faso, our beloved Ibrahim Traoré, Zimbabwe's Emerson Mnangagwa. Sisi was there from Egypt. You also had a representation from Vietnam and Mongolia. The reason this is important is because the global south was fully represented and the vast majority of the world was represented there in terms of the demographics, in terms of the leaders who were representing them. The threats and also the pressure by Zelensky and the West not to have this was about ensuring that the military messaging wasn't achieved. The parade was a clear act of defiance against all of those individuals who are seeking to have the war stopped in a particular way, because what Putin asked for was a 3-day truce, and Zelensky said no, and that's where the threat came from. Therefore, they had to ramp up security. There was a no-fly zone and a whole range of other things were being put into place. But the messaging needed not to appear on the world stage, and that's what took place. You had military maneuvers, for want of a better word, from the following countries. All these countries took part in the actual Victory Day parade. So there were troops from Uzbekistan, Belarus, China, Egypt, Laos, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Myanmar, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. So basically it was a show of force. It also showed and highlighted that Europe is not as cohesive as they would like, because there were two individual presidents who came from Europe. Fico was one of them, and I'm not sure if Orban went. Orban of Turkey. Sorry, Orban of Hungary. And that's why I think the VE Day celebration in Russia was very important. The thing that our VE Day celebration over here lacked was an acknowledgement of other people and other countries' involvement. And when you think about it, without the Russians, we wouldn't be marching today. So what do you think about my thoughts in relation to this VE Day celebration? What went on behind it? The threats to world leaders, the pressure from Europe, the fact that you had, the best part of 15 countries sharing their military soldiers and contributing to the parade. What does that say on the global stage? It says we are united. That's what I think it says. What does it say to you? Give me your thoughts, your 2 pence, your 3 cities, or your declining dollar price. Don't forget to jump up in the YouTube. Don't forget to become a subscriber and also to donate at my website, which is called DeniseHeadley.com. And I will thank you for 2 things. 1, your listening ear, and seeing you also again next week. Thank you so much, and cut!